everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing my annual top 10 albums of the year list. So I'll be counting down my 10 favourite new releases from 2022. So if you're familiar with my channel, you'll probably kind of know what to expect a little bit. I have reviewed probably about half of these albums. But if you're not, if this just happens to be like the first video like you've come across of mine, I'm not saying this is a definitive list by any means of the best albums or the most critically acclaimed albums. So just the ones which I personally liked the most, and they are kind of generally by sort of artists I would say are kind of favourites of mine, that maybe not necessarily considered super current artists either. But anyway, we'll just get started with the list at number 10. Which is one of the exceptions to that. This is a kind of a current band. I think this is their third or fourth album. It's by a band called Rolling Blackouts CF, called Endless Runes. Now, I like this album. This is a really good guitar rock album. There's in the band, I think there's 3 guitarists and bass player, drummer. So it's kind of quite a big sound they've got, and quite a unique sound with all the kind of guitars interweaving and kind of coming together. It sounds great, but my only criticism of this album is a lot of the songs do sound very similar though. It doesn't change its sound much beyond its the initial setting out of its sound, and then doesn't really change. So it's one of these things I really like. The first side of this album I think is pretty faultless, but then the second side it's almost just it's the exact same kind of thing to be honest. So I think a bit more variety wouldn't have gone amiss, but it still sounds, especially the first side, exciting and fresh, and I think all round a pretty good album here by Rolling Blackouts CF. Next up, number 9 is going for Tears for Fears. This is their album, The Tipping Points. This was a bit of a big comeback album for them. I think this is their first record since 2006 of new material. And I mean, it's great just to see them back, making music again. So this album I think is really good. I think it's the first side for me is stronger than the second. I think it's a bit more upbeat, the first side. I think a little bit, there's certainly more catchy songs, so things like The Tipping Point, Break the Man. I like No Small Thing, the opener, and also My Demons is really great as well. But then there's also some quite nice ballads on the second side. So things like Rivers of Mercy and Please Be Happy, they're just good ballads. But then the Master Plan's a really good song as well. But the last two are maybe a little bit forgettable, and that's maybe that thing with this. It's a little bit I guess a little bit inconsistent, but it's still a really good record though. I think they're probably as good as any kind of band who hasn't made any new material for about 15 years, kind of coming out with something that would be able to come up with there. So, and also I think worth noting as well, this was released maybe about a year or two after Roland had lost his wife as well. So I think that kind of reflects in some of the lyrics. So I suppose in some ways some songs are quite dark and a bit sad, but then there's other there's other more upbeat moments as well to kind of balance it out. So all round a really good record here.
I could make you happy, you could make me sad.
Next up now at number 8 is this album. It's by Tim Burgess, called Typical Music. Now this one was actually the album I bought, which I I had 9 albums, and then I was needed a number 10. So I was kind of racking my brain thinking what could I possibly get, and I was, what was I where this coming out? Or I think I'd just seen it in a record shop and was I didn't know he'd put out another album, another solo album, and I must say I hadn't been a big fan of his last 2 solo releases, so it was one of these things. I think I just thought I'll give this album a chance, and I mean I'm really glad I did, because it is a very strong album. It's a very long album as well, as we said. I think there's about 22 tracks on here, and it's well over an hour and 20 I think in total, so it is a long record. So I suppose that's maybe the one kind of criticism of it, but at the same time I think it actually almost suits being that long. It's a bit like the White Album, I guess, in the sense that there's so much variety, like in terms of like styles like on here. It's a very much a kind of genre bending album, and it's a bit like I suppose it does maybe take a bit to get through like in that one sitting, but it is still a great record though, and that one which definitely exceeded like my expectations there. So yeah, Tim Burgess and Typical Music. Next up now at number 7 is by Belle and Sebastian. The album is called A Bit of Previous. So now, I must say I'm not the biggest fan of Belle and Sebastian. I've only got the 2 most popular albums, Boy with the Arab Strap and If You're Feeling Sinister. But I thought that I would give this one like a chance. And I really love this. I think there's, again, it's a bit like the Tim Burgess one, a lot of variety like on here, and a lot of stuff which doesn't sound like old school Belle and Sebastian. They kind of have got like a kind of like they've got a kind of set style that's kind of very kind of twee and sort of kind of like slightly artsy kind of style about them. But this album, there's so much different ground like on here. So things like probably like my favourites are things like Unnecessary Drama and like Talk to Me Tonight, slightly more like upbeat like kind of songs. And then you've also got a kind of variety like of lead vocalists like as well. Like you've got Stuart Murdoch, of course, but you've also got, I think there's a female singer and then maybe another male singer like as well. So again, that just gives the album like again like another kind of sense like of like variety. So I've really enjoyed this record. Possibly, I'm not gonna say it's my favourite Belle and Sebastian album, but for me it's right up there like with like those two ones there like which like I named. So yeah, a great record here, A Bit of Previous. Next up now, number 6 is going to Blossoms and their album Ribbon Around the Bum. Now I must confess this one was a bit of a disappointment for me like as an album, because Blossoms in 2020 had my second favourite album like off like the year, like only second like to Paul McCartney, so it's probably really first like if you were saying I thought that was objectively speaking like the best album. Full Show of Space is a great record. For me this one was a definite step down like in terms like of like quality. I think it just lacks the same kind of like the memorable songs like what that album does. Like I mean there are some memorable songs in here, certainly like there's good stuff like The Sulking Poet, like Ode to New York City and Careful, mostly like the singles. Also like there's a track which sounds exactly like the Smiths. What's it called? It's Born Wild. It's a great song, great riff, great sound on it. But again, there's just a fair few slightly fillery songs like on like the second side on it, and I think as well they've kind of not. I don't want to say they've not changed their sound much, because there are moments on here which almost sound more raw and a bit more like acoustic. So things like things like Sulking Poet and New York City, like I've kind of got like a slightly different, like slightly more raw and stripped back feel to them, like than the previous album. But it also feels overproduced, like in other places as well. Like it's quite an odd mix for me. But yeah, for me, like overall, yeah, Blossoms would come in at number 6.
You never worried, you never cared, you never said.
Okay, next one up now, number 5, another kind of comeback album is The House of Love and the album State of Grace here. So yeah, this is the first album in about, I think, well over 10 years, like I'd want to say. I mean, they don't pump out albums like all that often. It's not, we're not like the early 90s like anymore, like for The House of Love. But this is a really great record, and I think I like it especially because they have developed their sound like a little bit like on this album. I mean, it's almost like no wonder, because it is a completely different lineup. Like aside from like the lead singer, like songwriter Guy Chadwick, it is all different musicians like from like the other House of Love albums. So I guess it is a kind of that's why it sounds different. But I do like how they are kind of it has a kind of like a slight Americana feel to it, like in places, but also just throughout some really great songs. Like some great tracks like Light of the Morning, Into the Laughter, and A State of Grace, the title track, I would pick out as my favourites.
Against the state, to do your job and whip up
Okay, now this album is one which has definitely grown on me since I first got it, and yeah, initially I had this a bit further down the list, I think maybe 1 or 2 places down, but I just recently decided to move it up a place. So it's Paul Heaton, Jackie Abbott, and NK Pop. So yeah, if you're familiar with my channel, you probably will know Paul Heaton is one of my favourite artists. But when this album came out, I was a bit disappointed in it. I think because it does feel the same to a lot of his other recent albums. It's almost like any of these songs could have fitted on any of the last 4 Paul and Jackie albums. But when you actually get to know it, the songs, they kind of just they kind of creep up on you a little bit, and then suddenly you kind of you're humming them away, or there's certain lines which just kind of stick out, and you think, wow, that is some really great, pointed songwriting. I absolutely love this album. I would say I'm not sure where I would put it. If I was ranking all the albums, simply because it's quite a difficult thing to do, because they are all brilliant, but they're all kind of very, very, very similar albums. So I guess I wouldn't say this is the best one that they've done. Definitely not. But it is still a great record though, and some really fantastic songs. And I think his songwriting on this album is actually a bit more political now, which is quite good to see him getting back into that. I guess we've not really seen that side of Paul Heaton since maybe the House Martins days, to some extent. A great record here, NK Pop.
It's the way you make me feel magnificent.
Okay, next up now, number 3 is going to Elvis Costello and the Imposters. This was released right back at the start of the year, back in January, with an album called The Boy Named If. Now, this for me was probably one of the surprise albums of the year. It kind of came in pretty close to the top of my list, at the start of the year, and then it never really moved, to be honest with you, because I just really enjoyed this album, much more so than his other more recent albums. Hey Clockface, which came out, was either last year or maybe 2 years ago, I thought was terrible. But this is a huge improvement, and I guess we could possibly say that working remotely, this album was recorded, remotely by all the musicians, dialing in their parts. And I think that might have helped it, actually. He changed his established approach a little bit, and I think made everyone play up to their strengths a little bit, or try and really play to their strengths. So I think this is a great record, and so many fantastic songs on it. So things like The Boy Named If, The Difference, Mistook You for a Friend, Magnificent Hurt is a great single, and then The Death of Magic Thinking, and again a lot of different styles and sounds covered on here. A big fan of this album, Elvis Costello. Certainly his best one, I would say, since probably Brutal Youth, which was in the mid-90s.
I don't know why.
Okay, number 2 now is going for Johnny Marr and Fever Dreams Parts 1 through to 4. So this is another kind of sprawling double album here, and this is great. I would say I probably do prefer Call the Comet still to it, which was his last album from 2018. But I still think that this is a fantastic record. Again, a lot of variety on it in terms of his the style of the songs. There's some which are more guitar based, there's more synth based stuff on here as well. But it's all just delivered with a lot of energy, and a lot of fantastic guitar playing on it for me. So Johnny Marr and Fever Dreams Part 1 to 4 will come in at number 2.
I want love.
Okay, and now at number 1 for me, probably one of the surprise albums I got for like the year, and surprised for me as well just by how much I really liked it. So it is Paolo Nutini and Last Night in the Bittersweet. So this was a big comeback for Paolo. He's a big star like in Scotland, like his home country, like Scotland. Like I was familiar with him before this album came out, and that's kind of why like it was a big anticipated comeback. It'd been about 8 years like since he'd like released like anything, so it was as I said, it was like the big kind of comeback album, and this did not disappoint at all. Like from that kind of like my first listen, I was really just hooked into it, to be honest with you, and just for some reason all the songs really connected with me, and I just think that he's got an incredible voice, and there's so much variety again, like in terms of style, like on here. Again, it's a long album, it says 16 tracks, and it's a good hour and 10 minutes this, but there's so much on here, so much fantastic songs, things like Radio, Acid Eyes, Petrified in Love, Everywhere, Children at Stars, and Shine a Light. A lot of great songs, and I hope it's not another 8 years until he releases something, because I would hope he would maybe spurred on by this, maybe start to pump out the albums like a bit more regularly. But I mean, if this is it for 8 years, I'm sure that I'll still be listening to this in 8 years time, to be honest. So that's my number 1 album of the year, Paolo Nutini and Last Night in the Bittersweet. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed that video. I would be interested to know what your favourite albums are from this year, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.